branding for startups. So you must be wondering, okay, this is a startup event. What is branding is to do with startup? Startup event should talk about blockchain, which is the next topic. It should talk about founders' journey, which we just listened to. It should talk about funding, investors. What is branding has to do with startups? Okay? Branding is for Coca-Cola. They sell carbonated drink. We are startup founders, innovators. We have great idea, great product. We don't need branding. Do you? Maybe, maybe not. Let's find out. Have you heard of this brand called GAFAM? Anyone? GAFAM stands for Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft. These are the 5 brands that literally dominate their category. And mind you, all were startups once. All had great products, and they had a fantastic journey to reach where they are. But they very effectively use branding as a tool to reach where they are, to achieve this market leadership position. How did you do that? For example, Google, Amazon, Facebook, Microsoft, Apple. Apple, I believe, is one of the strongest brands we have. So how did Apple reach where it is today? What branding strategies they have used? Let's find out that also. For example, there's an interesting story about Apple. The Apple's co-founder, Steve Jobs, is not a techie at all. He had one very interesting thing about him. While Apple as a company was working on developing innovative product, absolutely revolutionary product, at the same time, Steve Jobs and his team were parallelly working on something else also, to create a compelling brand story about Apple. So if you all remember, when Apple launched Macintosh computer, the product that changed the computer industry forever, it was a great branding exercise. In 1984, when Macintosh was supposed to be launched, the whole team was working on the features of Macintosh, the minute details. At the same time, Steve Jobs was working with an ad agency called Chia Day, and they were working on the launch campaign, the brand campaign of Apple Macintosh computer, which was supposed to be launched in 1984. I'll show you the ad also, but before that, let's understand the minute detailing they did to develop, to come up with a brand strategy, to come up with a brand narrative for a product that they believe is going to change the computer industry forever. What did they do? Obviously, they briefed the ad agency to come up with a great brand strategy. But at the same time, brand strategy needs some insights. You need to understand your market, you need to understand your competitors, you need to understand your customers, and then you develop your brand narrative. So what did Apple and their whole team, or their branding team did? So let's understand few facts. It was the year 1984. The whole computer industry was dominated by IBM, the big blue, the big brother of computer industry, literally dictating the terms in the industry. And here we had Apple Computers, a small-time company challenging the market leader. So they developed first attack strategy, which is how do I, fight the giant like IBM, which is called Big Brother, the Big Blue. So there's an interesting story they came up with. Okay, there is a book called 1984 by George Orwell, very, very popular novel, which talked about a state where, there is a big brother who is watching all citizens and dictating what they should do, what they should talk about, even what they should think. Just like IBM, which was doing the same thing in the computer industry. So first thing, they connected the Apple narrative with that book. Secondly, they developed a very interesting ad campaign for that. And during those days in 1984, there was no internet. Television was one of the most powerful medium for advertising. And in US, Super Bowl was just like IPL nowadays in India. So they decided to run the ad during the final of 1984 Super Bowl. But at the same time, Steve Jobs had a out-of-the-box idea. He said, we will definitely run this ad, but we'll run this ad only once. That means the ad that I'm going to show you now has been on the television screen only once till date. But till today, all branding books, all marketing books consider this as one of the most successful branding strategy ever. Let's see the ad first and then we'll take it forward. Volume.
A garden of pure ideology, where each worker may bloom, secure from the pests of any contradictory force. Unification, of course, is more powerful a weapon than any fleet or army on earth. We are one people, with one will, one resolve, one cause. Our hands shall talk themselves to death, and we will bury them with their own confusion. We shall prevail.
On January 24th, Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh. And you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984.
This was the Apple ad 1984, the most popular ad in the history of ad industry. So if you see the ad, it was not just an ad, a story. It was basically, it captured the brand essence of Apple as a company, as a Macintosh, as a product. The ad said 1984 won't be 1984 again, because that product was going to change the world, and it did. So that's how you build a brand strategy, a brand narrative, and actually you can change the world. And Apple is not the only company that has been using branding very effectively. Back home in India, we have Flipkart, which is very cleverly used kids, dressed as adult, talking about different features of Flipkart. Why? Because when Flipkart was there in Indian market in 2007-8, online shopping was a new thing. People was wondering, how do I shop online? So they communicated through this ad, oh guys, please, online shopping is bachcho ka khel, okay? So that's how they build their own narrative. Paytm said, Paytm karo, as simple as that. What Amazon is doing, Amazon has got everything right from day one. The name itself, Amazon, it was a bookstore when it started. It could have said, oh, greatbookstore.com. But no, Jeff Bezos didn't say it, I'm a bookstore. The name of the company was Amazon, which communicated the wide offering they were giving online. Also, if you see the logo, A to Z, that means here you will get everything, A to Z. So the Amazon name as well as the logo gives everything about the brand. And that is how you use your brand strategy and brand narrative cleverly. What Jeff Bezos said, he said, your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room. So what gossip you can create while you're not in the room is all about branding. So let's understand what is branding. But before that, what are the reasons for branding? I need to have a logical reason, because I am a startup founder. I have my other priorities like developing a product. Why I should look at branding? What are the benefits? There are many benefits. Customer recognition, increases trust, create differentiation, customer loyalty, premium pricing, power over retailers, better leads, new introduction of products become easier, defense against competition, defense against negative news if you're a stronger brand. You can attract investors, which is like a prime priority for most of the startups. You can attract great talent. It increases employee retention. The list goes on and on. But when you talk to startup founders, they'll say, theek hai, but still, but, there's always a but, because there are few misconceptions associated with branding. What are those myths or misconceptions about branding? One, they always say, I have a great product, I don't need a branding. Remember, You may have a great product, but you need to reach out to the right audience and engage them. That you can do with branding. They say, oh, I've designed my logo, branding is done. Mind you, branding is not just logo, it is much beyond just a logo. Then they say, oh, branding is for a big company, I'm a small startup. No, branding is not about, running an ad campaign on a television. Nowadays, you can, every customer touch points, you have the opportunity to create a brand narrative, a brand story. And small company or a big company can definitely do that. Then you say, oh, branding is for consumer products. I'm building a tech product. Mine is a B2B product. I'm not going to a consumer. Mind you, we still need branding. Some say branding is expensive. Not really, because nowadays we have social media, web. There are very easier ways to reach out the target audience. You may say, oh, branding is, emotion. It's like emotional atyachar. Mind you, in branding and marketing, everything has to be emotional. Because you may say, oh, we human beings are very rational, logical thinker. But the reality is, even the psychological survey says that our decision making is purely emotional. We just add logic or rational post-decision. So emotional plays very important role when you build your brand story. Then you say, oh, branding, marketing, advertising, everything is the same. Actually, it's not. Branding is the message that you want to communicate. Marketing is all about finding the ways to reach out to your target audience. And advertising is just one tool out of a lot of tools available. Okay? So just by putting a hoarding, you're not doing branding. You're just doing one part of the whole branding exercise. Then you may say, oh, word of mouth is the best. I have a great product, 10 people are using, then 100 people use, and then 1 lakh people use. Maybe, maybe not. You cannot take that risk because you're planning to build a scalable business. So you need to explore more than one avenues to do right kind of branding. Then you may say, oh, there is no ROI. Right now I have 100 rupees and I want to invest that 100 rupees in technology. It will give me better ROI. But mind you, branding gives you much more ROI if planned well. So, okay, you might be convinced, yes, branding is important, but what is branding? I am a techie, I am an engineer, I don't know anything about marketing, branding. What should I know about branding? What is a brand? Okay, so there are many definitions of branding. Branding, some people say is, for example, the famous CEO of Zappos once said, your culture is your brand. Maybe he's right. So what is branding? Let's understand that first. Okay, before going into the technical details of branding, just simply understand that brand is the sum total of all the emotions, thoughts, images, history, possibilities, and gossip that exists in the marketplace or in the mind about a certain company or a product or a person. So basically, branding is a combination of everything. Branding is just one thing. Okay, every customer touch point gives us a branding experience, a brand narrative, and you need to carefully build that. For example, if you go further, if you talk to an agency branding guy, they start throwing you words like brand vision, brand identity, brand positioning, brand equity, architecture, personality, and again list goes on. So as a startup founder, we don't need a branding lesson. We need to simplify things. As a startup founder, what I need to understand? I need to understand, one, brand equals to experience. The experience that I'm going to give to my customer. And what is that experience? That experience may be when my customer is coming on my website, while he is using an app, while he is ordering an item and how it is being delivered, when there is a post-delivery customer experience. All are customer touch points which gives a brand story, and I need to control that brand experience. I need to have a consistency in all the customer touch points so that there is a common brand experience and I build a story around it. So that is what brand is all about. Brand means experience, and once you deliver consistent brand experience, what do you get? Brand equal to trust. Why? Because consistency delivering an experience builds a trust in your customer. So a trust is developed. So brand is trust. Then brand is a promise. Because once you deliver your experience consistently and once the trust is built, you have to ensure that you deliver your promise every time so that that trust is intact. And that's what you need to do. Remember, branding is all about interactions and relationships, both internally with your employees and externally with your customers, vendors, and other stakeholders. So you may say, okay, everything is fine, but products is important, okay? Because I'm focusing on products. But once Walter Lander once said that products are made in the factory, but brands are created in the mind. As a startup founder, I need to focus on customer so that the whole objective of the branding exercise is to occupy at the favorable place in the mind of the customer. And that is what branding all about. So how this branding journey start? Is it deliberate or is it, do I have any control in my branding journey? Okay. Actually, when you launch your company, when you start a company, when you launch a product, the branding journey has already started. Whether you have started it or actually the journey has already begun by launching that product in the market, because customer is starting experiences. And what customer experiences? There are 4 critical components that you need to control. One, in a startup space, branding is all about yourself, that is the startup founder. As people say, for example, when you talk to investors, they say, oh, we don't fund ideas, we fund people. And who are the people? People are basically the founding team, the core team. So branding is all about you, your personal branding, what you stand for as an individual, your expertise, your image in the market matters a lot. So you have to be very careful about how you present yourself, because branding has already started. Secondly, your company. Okay, what is your company's offering? What your company is all about? People have already started building an opinion, forming an opinion about your company. So you need to start controlling that also. Then branding is all about your concept about your company. Twitter is a microblogging site. Okay, what is your company is all about? What is the concept? Now, if you don't communicate clearly, the customer is already building some opinions, forming some views about it. So you need to control that also. And most importantly, you need to build your community, okay? Because this community is going to form a very, very strong brand image. And that community can be leveraged very effectively. For example, when Uber was launched in US, they were facing a lot of competition in different cities, because ride-sharing taxi is a very regulated thing. And a lot of cities were facing finding that company. So when there were few bans in certain cities in US, the users, the community that Uber managed to build, they voluntarily come out on the street in favor of Uber, protesting against the government to, remove the ban. So as a company, as a startup founder, are you able to build that kind of community? Because if 5 people are using your product or 500, the smaller or larger, the community has already started to build. So you need to control all that. Now this is something which you may have control on it or you may not have. But once you decide, branding is important. When do I decide? When to start the branding exercise? Obviously, as a startup founder, the first objective is to build the product right. But then, when do I start branding exercise? Is it too early? Is it too late? How do I use branding? So there is no formula for it. If you have resources, branding runs parallelly. While you're developing your product, your brand strategy should be also in place. But sometimes we don't have the luxury of resources to do that. But when you're at a growth stage, branding becomes very, very critical component, because brand strategy can power your growth strategy. So you have to take a call as a founder, when do I need to start branding exercise? Because if you don't brand yourself the way you want to, then others will brand you the way they want to. So you need to control the narrative. So once you decide branding, what next? As I told you, you are not a marketing professional as a startup founder. So what you build as a startup founder is basically a very popular term in the startup phase. MVP, which stands for minimum viable product. We all are working on that minimum viable product as a startup founder. So here I'm giving you a new term which stands for MVP, minimum viable brand. You need not get into the details of marketing strategy and all the marketing gyan and case studies. As a startup founders, you need to understand certain basics. That's it. That is more than sufficient to begin with. You need to understand very few things to build a minimum viable brand. How do you build a minimum viable brand? Very simple. First, decide what we stand for, your brand's essence. Then, what we believe in, your brand values. Then comes what people we seek to engage, your target audience. You have to be very, very clear about your target audience. You cannot say, oh, my product is great, so everyone is my target audience. Everyone is never your target audience. So you have to be very, very clear about your target audience. Then, what next? You need to define what is unique about us. What is my differentiation? What is my USP? Okay? You need to define that. Then, what we offer. Okay, what experience that we are offering. Are we a great innovative product company? Or am I a great service company? What am I? What is my offer? I need to be very clear about that. And then finally comes what we say and how. That is what your logo, your ad campaign and all those things comes much later. But once those 5 things are in place, then the whole advertising, marketing, branding initiatives will roll on. So, how do you start your branding campaign? Okay, in our ancient texts, it's always say, first know yourself, know thyself. Okay, so same principle applies in marketing, branding also. Before knowing how we are perceived, we should know who we are. We always talk about, log kya keh rahe hain. We always have that thing. But before we build a log kya keh rahe hain narrative, we need to have aap kya hai narrative. So branding is basically an exercise to bridge the gap between आप क्या हो and लोग क्या सोच रहे हैं आपके बारे में. So branding exercise is all about that. People, the things people see and the things people don't see. Okay, I'll just quickly skip this part because we are running out of time. So basically, once you decide to build a brand story, okay, it's very simple. There are simple 5 steps to build a brand narrative. 1, and most important, identify the target market. As I said, okay, you have to have very, very clear understanding about your target audience. You need to get into, you need to dig deeper. You need to understand where do they live, what they eat, what are their likes, what are their dislikes, how old they are, how do they like to be spoken to, which medium is appropriate to reach out to, how do they spend their free time. There are so many questions. You need to find out the answers to those questions to clearly understand the target audience, because that is the most important aspect of the whole branding exercise. Know your customers. Once that is clear, then you can find rest of the things very easy. So step 1, identify the target market. Second, study your competition. But obvious, you cannot live in isolation. While you're working on a product, there are 10 people who are working on a similar concept. So you need to understand where your competitors are and where you stand in the market. Third is very simple, differentiate yourself, because if you're just a Me Too company, nobody's going to come to you. So you need to define what is so special about you. Fourth, then you create your brand image. There comes the whole brand story, brand narrative, your brand logo, the ad campaigns. Okay, so once you have everything in place, then what you do is simple. You tell a story. Okay, you need to come up with a brand story. Remember, we are human beings. We are programmed to react to stories. As a kid, we are programmed to listen to stories. Politicians tell us stories. Spiritual gurus tell us stories. We are programmed to accept stories, digest stories very easily. So when it comes to branding also, you need to build a very, very compelling brand story. The brand story could be about the founder, it could be about the company, it could be about the concept, or it could be about the community. But importantly, you need to have a memorable brand story, because branding is all about being knowable, likable, and trustable. So how do you build a brand story? Okay, because I'm not going to talk about the great feature your product or service offer. I'm always going to talk about the experience, the story I had when I interacted with that brand. So how do you build that brand story? So in the end, again, I'll come to the Apple example. How did Apple build a brand story? Okay, so if you remember, Apple in 1997 launched a legendary campaign called Apple Think Different. A very, very interesting campaign. Let's see the ad first and then we'll move forward. I think there is some problem in the video. That's fine. So basically, Apple launched a very interesting campaign called Think Different. Now, if you see Apple as a company, they say, oh, okay, let me just read out the script that was used in that ad. The ad said, very interesting, very compelling story in that script. It said, here is to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They are not fond of rules and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About only thing you can't do is ignore them because they change things. They push the human race forward. While some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. Apple Think Different. I think in 1997, Apple has perfectly captured the whole philosophy about the startup world, about startup founders. Because startup founders are the crazy ones. They are the misfits. They believe that they can change the world. They are the people who think different, out of the box. Apple had that story from 1997 till now, for more than 2 decades, and that's what they've been doing. So remember, your brand is your story. Live it, tell it, and people will listen. And my favorite author, Seth Godin, once very interestingly said that people do not buy goods or services. They buy relation, stories, and magic. So you need to create magic in your story, and everything will fall in place. So just get out of the building and make a story. Now, why get out of the building? Because Steve Blank once said that there are no facts inside your building, so get the heck outside. This one tip I would like to give all the startup founders who are most of the time they're spending in front of the computers. Please understand, if you want to build a brand story, you need to get out of the building, meet customers, understand what they want, and then build the story. So finally, get out of the building and conquer the world. Thank you, friends.